Why do we cling so tenaciously to the idea of consciousness existing over and above the content of things? Why do we complain so forcefully that anyone who denies this must be conveying a poor joke rather than an idea? Is it not to rescue the undeniable fact that the content of experience not only exists, immediately and intrinsically, but that each part of that content has a hold, so to speak, on its neighbours? It takes account of itself and of the others, comes out of itself in a way in order to make itself known, and in this way all the field of experience becomes transparent from one part to another, or constituted like a space filled with mirrors. This binary nature of the parts of experience, knowing on the one hand that they have their own properties, and on the other that they relate to other parts and are known themselves, is noted and explained by the dominant idea of a fundamental dualism in the make-up of each individual piece of experience. In this sheet of paper, it is said, there are not only contents, whiteness, thinness, and so on, but also the secondary fact of consciousness of the whiteness and thinness. This function of being related, of being part of a whole, more comprehensive framework of experience, we make into an ontological fact, and we make a home for this fact inside the paper itself, coupling it with its whiteness and thinness. It is not an extrinsic relationship, as we suppose. It is part of the phenomenon itself. I think basically that we represent reality to ourselves as being made in the same way as the colours in a painting. First of all, there are coloured things that correspond to the content, and there is a medium, oil or paste, that holds them in place and corresponds to consciousness. This is a complete dualism, in which, through certain procedures, we can separate each element away by subtraction. In this way we can be sure that by making a great effort of introspection we can catch our consciousness in action as a pure spiritual activity, almost completely neglecting the things it is focusing on at any given moment. Could we not, I ask, just as easily reverse this way of viewing things? Let us suppose that the principal reality is neutral, and let us call it by a name that is still ambiguous, such as phenomenon, datum, or Vorfindung, finding. Personally, I like to use the plural, and I call it pure experiences. This is, if you like, a monism, but it is an altogether rudimentary monism, absolutely opposed to the binary so-called monism of Spinozist scientific positivism. These pure experiences exist and succeed one another, entering into relationships with one another which vary infinitely. These relationships are themselves an essential part of the framework of experiences. There is consciousness in these relationships, just as there is consciousness in their destinations. The result is that groups of experiences notice and distinguish one another, and that the same single experience, given the grand variety of these relationships, can play a role in several groups at once. In this way, it can be classed as a physical phenomenon in a certain context of its neighbours, whereas in another grouping it figures as an event of consciousness, in the same way that the same particle of ink can appear simultaneously in two lines, one vertical and one horizontal, provided it is situated at their intersection. To help fix our ideas, let's take the experience we are now having of the place we are in, of these walls, this table, these chairs, this space. In this full, concrete and undivided experience, just as it is, the objective physical world and the personal interior world of each of us meet each other and merge, just as lines merge at their intersection. As a physical thing, this room relates to the rest of the building, a building of which we know and understand nothing. It owes its existence to a whole story of financiers, architects and workers. It weighs on the earth. It will last an uncertain amount of time. If a fire breaks out, the chairs and tables inside will quickly be reduced to ashes. As a personal experience, on the other hand, something reported, something known, something we are aware of, this room can be seen in different ways. Its antecedents are not workers, they are the respective thoughts we have had just now. Soon it will be a fleeting fact in our biographies, associated with pleasant memories. As a mental experience, it doesn't weigh anything, and its structure isn't combustible. It exercises no physical force except on our individual brains, and many of us will deny even this influence, whereas the physical room has a relationship of physical influence to everything else in the world. And yet it is absolutely the self-same room in both cases. Although we are not engaged in speculative physics, and although we're looking at things from the point of view of common sense, the room we see and feel is very much the physical room. Of what are we speaking then, if not of that which, made of the same part of material nature as our souls at this same moment are embracing, enters, just as it is, into the present and personal experience of each of us, and which our memories will regard forever as an integral part of our histories? It is absolutely the same stuff which, at the same time, depending on the context we consider, is the material and physical fact, or the fact of personal consciousness. I think, therefore, that we should shy away from treating consciousness and matter as being different in essence. We can't derive either one by subtraction, neglecting the other part of an experience made of two parts. Experiences are, on the contrary, simpler in nature in the first place. They become conscious in their entirety, and they become physical in their entirety. It is by way of addition that this comes about. As long as experiences last, entering into relationships of physical influence, stopping each other, warming each other, lighting each other, and so on, we take from them a distinct group which we refer to as the physical world. As long as, on the other hand, they are fleeting and physically inert, and they arrange themselves in no fixed order, but seem rather to be following emotional caprices, we take them to form another group, which we refer to as the psychological world. It is by entering right now into a great number of these psychological groups that this room becomes something of which we are conscious, something reported, something known. Because it will, in future, become part of our biographies, it will not be followed by the silly, monotonous repetition of itself over time which characterizes its physical existence. It will be followed instead by other experiences, which will be discontinuous with it, or which will have the strange sort of continuity that we call remembering. Tomorrow it will have taken its place in each of our past lives. But the various presents to which all those pasts will be linked will be very different from the present which this room will enjoy tomorrow as a physical entity. But this line of reasoning will take us too far. I can't go into all the hidden recesses of the theory of consciousness, or of what you Italians call nosology. I'll have to content myself with short remarks or simple suggestions, which are, I fear, all too obscure for lacking the necessary development. Allow me then to sum up, too briefly and in a dogmatic fashion, with the following 6 theses. 1. Consciousness, in its ordinary meaning, does not exist, any more than does matter, to which Berkeley dealt the final blow. 2. What does exist, and forms the truth that the word consciousness retains, is the tendency of the parts of experience to be reported or known. 3. This tendency is explained by the fact that certain experiences can lead one to another via intermediary experiences, which are clearly characterized in a way so that some play the role of things that are known, and others play that of subjects that are understood. 4. You can perfectly well define these two roles without stepping outside the framework of experience itself, and without invoking anything transcendental. 5. The designations subject and object, represented and representative, thing and thought, signify, therefore, a practical distinction which is of little importance, but which is of a functional order only, and not ontological as classic dualism would have it. 6. All said and done, things and thoughts are not at all fundamentally heterogeneous, but are made of the same stuff, a stuff that cannot be defined as such, but only felt, and which can be called, if we wish to name it, the stuff of experience in general. End of chapter 8 of Essays in Radical Empiricism by William James.